This documentary celebrates 50 years of preservation efforts and startling achievements by the Laguna Greenbelt from its origins in 1968. Let's explore why it all began here.
The interrelationships between the natural landscape, the artistic heritage, created the political environment that created the decisions that fostered the character of the town and the preservation of the Greenbelt. All this together created the treasured community that we love. The landforms of what became Laguna Beach are shown. This is an overview of the Laguna Beach landscape prior to the construction of Coast Highway in 1926. And here you can see how different the Laguna landscape is and was compared to the flat plains and rolling hills of the rest of Orange County. So when the Spanish and Mexican ranchos were formed, they left most of this area out. While we look at it as dramatic and beautiful, they saw it as unpromising farmland or an area that was not suitable for ranching, and so no one claimed it as part of their ranch. Almost all of Orange County was claimed as ranches or as the San Juan Capistrano Mission, leaving the area that became Laguna Beach, the triangle of land that's in the middle of the circle, as unclaimed. Rancho San Joaquin, which became the Irvine Ranch, and Rancho Niguel, which became the Moulton Ranch, were directly surrounding this unclaimed area that was still government land as of 1870. It was open for homesteaders to come and claim. After the Civil War, people were coming from all over the country looking for remaining government land that they could stake out a claim, and Laguna Beach had some of that land. They staked out a total of 39 homesteads within that area. This is a homestead map done by Beryl Wilson Vbeck, who did the research to document where those homesteads were. Homestead life was very different, very agricultural, with barns and cottages and open land where they did dry farming, and they also planted eucalyptus trees. The lines of the homesteads, as superimposed over the topography, answer the question of why Laguna Beach has such a varied outline of development. In South Laguna, you can also see the pattern of how those homestead lines affected the development that came later. To qualify for a grant, the homesteaders had to show they were making beneficial use of the land, and the way many of them did that was to plant groves of eucalyptus. So there were landmark groves throughout South Laguna and Laguna Beach. This had a big influence on the landscape, on the homey quality of the community, and they became another one of the favorite subjects of the painters who painted eucalyptus in all different settings, with the coves and mountains and ocean in the background. So we can see how one thing led to another. If we hadn't had the rough and dramatic landscape, the cliffs, the coves, the canyons, that whole area would have been included in some ranch, and it would have been unavailable for homesteaders. Without the patchwork of homesteads, Laguna Beach could have been developed much later, perhaps in a master plan approach, like Cameo Shores or Newport Coast. The area would have been off limits to artists, and our artistic heritage would never have developed. Our treasured, historic American landscape is the foundation of the essence of Laguna Beach as we know it today.
From its origins in 1968, when Jim Dilly offered his vision of a Laguna Greenbelt and convinced us that it was possible.
Yeah, I think that Jim's claim to fame was that he knew how to talk with people and how to meet them where they are and to fire their imagination to what's possible. And as a mentor of mine, he fired my imagination.
Because he went to Europe, and in particular, he found, just a few years before I had talked to him, he found that the English had developed around various towns in England greenbelts that circled their towns. And he was so enthralled by the concept of having a greenery around their town and recognizing that our own town was so much like the English towns in that we still have open space around us, greenery in the interior, in the north and the south, in the eastern side, and then the ocean on the west. So it would maybe be thought of as a green belt, blue belt.
Stick out. One is that he said, always be open to the person you're working with, whether they agree with you or not. Like, don't ever shut the door. Like, always be gracious and human, and realize that you can speak to anybody's heart.
So in 1965, Laguna Beach faced destruction by Laguna Canyon Freeway extension that was drawn by traffic planners that would have turned the downtown of Laguna Beach into a giant freeway interchange. That threat would have destroyed the downtown, and the citizens realized that they needed to have some kind of general plan and plan the town in a way that preserved the beauty of the town. Citizens came together and founded an organization called the Citizens Town Planning Association. One-way off-ramp, and Forest would have been a one-way on-ramp. And the downtown would have been a giant traffic interchange. And basically the whole Central Basin would have become a grand regional traffic interchange. There wouldn't have been, it would have destroyed the downtown, basically. Just by the formation of the Laguna Greenbelt, which was on the urging in 1968 of the recommendation of the Scenic Inventory Committee and the board of the Citizens Town Planning Association, who passed a Greenbelt resolution urging preservation of the canyons and hills around the town. Realizing that a broad community effort was necessary, CTPA allied with all other groups in the town in behalf of this vital preservation. In 1971, our long-standing concern for the Greenbelt and Central Basin neighborhood town preservation led us to undertake a comprehensive transportation policy. So on August 18th, the Town Planning Association and Traffic Committee presented a traffic memorandum and asked a broad program based upon an encompassing environmental ethic. And then for Laguna Beach, we proposed a monorail system from the freeway parking area down the canyon, an elevated system that would be, designed in a way that was conscious of the aesthetics of the whole Greenbelt, and also allowed for the tourists and people who could come down to leave their cars out of town and then bring them in on a monorail system or an above ground system that was not destroying the environment.
These two documents really took a lot of work to do, and there were 5 people on the committee, but it was almost all done by Mildred Hanuman, and I want her to get credit for the work she did. She's a very knowledgeable, very hardworking person, and she did about 90% is what's written in these. I did the other 10%, and we got it done. She continually impressed me with her knowledge and experience and her ability to write.
The vision of the Greenbelt evolved from 4 maps, starting with Bill Verner's rough depiction in 1968, followed by Michael Schlee's sketch in 1969. Then from a significant report in 1977 with 2 professional maps, one supported by Laguna Greenbelt, showing its natural setting, and the other strongly opposed by Laguna Greenbelt, showing potential development.
I found out that there were students and some of the kids at that time were going around into the hills and exploring these hills. And there was actually among the kids at that time an interest in birds of prey and snakes. At any rate, Mike had been exploring the trees, the caves, the canyons, the riparian areas around behind our hills and in throughout our hills, going into ranch land, going into Irvine ranch land, going into Moulton ranch land at that time, and land that was totally wild and used mostly as grazing.
One of our citizens who drives home every day on the Laguna Canyon Road.
Well, I've got to admit to a sense of coming home whenever I enter Laguna Canyon. It's Laguna's back door, but it's a very beautiful back door. And to consider that those hills up ahead might ever be subject to high-density commercial or residential development is a rather sad thought. However, it is owned by a property owner that has its own residential hillside, and at any time he would desire to so do, it could be developed that way. I'm a big city boy, having been born and reared in Chicago. It's kind of interesting and enjoyable to me to be able to realize that I'm just 3 to 5 minutes driving time away from a couple of the largest working cattle ranches in Southern California. The Manhattan commuters may need their martinis to relax after a day in the Madison Avenue jungle, but quite frankly, this is my martini.
A group of dedicated people are contributing their time and energies. They have formed the Greenbelt Committee. Located in offices donated by World Savings, they're working to find ways to purchase the Sycamore Hills lands and put them in public trust for the Greenbelt. You can help. Your donations will help. If you can't contribute dollars, visit the Greenbelt headquarters. Display and promote the bumper sticker. It's our responsibility, all of us. Support the Laguna Greenbelt.
Like many others, I met Jim Dilly by walking into his bookstore, and before I knew it, I was involved in the Greenbelt. He almost immediately, this was in 1972, he almost immediately had me involved in strategy sessions with himself, with Michael Schley, with Tom Alexander, and Judge Paul Agley. And we would meet about every month outside of the board meetings. We did that through 1973 and 74, and I formally joined the board in 1975. Now, the most important thing with Jim that I was involved in, specifically in those early years, was his desire to work with me, just a young academic getting started, in writing a series of position papers about the Greenbelt. And we wrote 4 of them, and I helped him put them together. We printed them and we distributed them. And the most interesting one for me was the one on water. Because out in the Laguna Canyon are the old wells that used to supply the water to Laguna Beach. And Jim argued very forcefully that there was collusion between the Laguna Water Board and the outside sources who wanted to bring water from the Colorado River, and they closed down the wells that were out there. They actually were brackish wells, and we were off and running.
And